Kia ora. The sermon this Sunday is in two parts. And the first reflection is on a passage from 1 Samuel 16, where the prophet Samuel chooses David to be the new king. It's a story where Samuel, allegedly under instructions from his God, goes to the house of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, and the invisible Mrs. Jesse or Mrs. Jesse, and chooses a new king from among Mr. and Mrs. Jesse's sons, not daughters, while the current king, Saul, was still alive and reigning. Yes, this is good old-fashioned treason by Samuel, by Jesse, by David too. But we need to be careful about thinking that this story is history. Yes, there probably was a Samuel and a Jesse and a David. But this choosing of, as the text says, the ruddy one with beautiful eyes, is part of an apologetic myth created to support the insurrection instigated by David and his band of followers, and to support David's eventual triumph in deposing Saul and becoming king. There are mixed messages in this reading. Samuel, with his God sitting on his shoulder, whispering his ear, chooses not the oldest son, nor the strongest, nor the expected. He chooses the last-born, the least, the one not even there. David was out doing dog's body work. But there is a subtext here. For we are told how handsome he is. Remember those beautiful eyes. How handsome David was, and later we're told how strong and brave he is, tackling lions and bears. I mean, let's get real. Choosing the least doesn't mean that he can't be handsome and strong and courageous. After all, this is a PR exercise. And that's the heart of it. This is a PR exercise. How the lowly reach the mighty heights. The last-born, against all odds, becomes the chosen ruler. How the wee one, the Frodo, takes on lions and bears and Goliaths. All by the will of God, of course. God always backs the winner. Yeah, right. This story from 1 Samuel 16 is just one episode in a major myth-making public relations campaign. Includes also the episodes of the Goliath story, the Friends with the King's Son, Jonathan story, the Saul's poor mental health story, poor king, he's suffering, and the David's weeping over Saul's deaths. Bit of make-believe there. All of this is a convoluted fictional explanation to Saul's followers and the populace generally of how God's chosen Saul ceased to be God's chosen, and David became the new God's chosen. Let's always be wary of the phrase God's chosen. The number of stories and the justifying explanations say to me that Saul actually had many friends and followers who were at best ambivalent about this change of leadership. So the mythmakers had to put in about Saul's health, David's respect and love for Saul and his family, and of course David's amazing prowess in battle. Today, the legacy of the David myth is not though in court power politics, nor really the Davidic dynasty and empire myth, though some modern-day Zionists use that to bolster their arguments, nor really the ridiculous assertion that Jesus in any way was the royal successor to David. Now, the legacy of this passage is one part of one verse, second half of verse 7. It reads, God does not see as mortals see. They look on the outward appearance. God looks on the heart. I'd like to suggest to you that this verse might be an insert, a quote from an earlier piece of writing or oral memory. It's a saying that comes from a different theological context. For as I've mentioned, the writer, editor, wants to tell us that actually David, though the last-born son of Jesse, was by no means the least. That Samuel did actually look on the outward appearance, the ruddy one with beautiful eyes. But in a hierarchical, patriarchal world, he wouldn't have been Samuel's first choice. So into our biblical passage is inserted text, a piece of theological wisdom. God does not see as mortals see, but God looks on the heart. And this piece of theological wisdom needs to be given new life, as it has been over the centuries. Beyond this context where it appears, beyond the context of choosing kings and rulers. The outward does not always reflect the inner. We can be fooled. The nice, polite neighbor might actually be a right so-and-so as a workmate. The successful, confident leader might actually be very insecure and needy. The gruff and monosyllabic tradie might be a gentle and caring father. People often aren't what they seem. We make judgments based on outward appearance. For we live in a world of images. How you look is all important. How you dress, speak, what your hair looks like. World of image, how we seem by our outward appearance is elevated in importance. Excuse me. Body image, lauding some, confining, even condemning others. This piece of theological wisdom is inviting us to look again, to look beyond the obvious, to look on the heart. God does not see as mortals see. They look on the outward appearance. God looks on the heart. My second reflection is about passion. Passion is one of those words that is a translator's nightmare, for its meanings are multiple and contradictory. It can mean suffering, great suffering. It can mean great love. It describes strong emotion and thus strong motivation. It can be what riles us up and what gives us tremendous joy. It's the root of the word com, meaning with passion. A loving, caring, confronting, healing, justice love. In Māori, arohatanga, the way of all embracing compassion. Compassion is maybe the church's best word for what Jesus was on about. And maybe the best description about what we, Jesus' followers, are on about. When I listen to the story of Pillars, Positive Futures for Children of Prisoners, I hear passion. I hear the passion, suffering of children separated from their parent and trying to navigate the world when the world is telling them that their parent is bad. And I hear too the passion of those who've walked with those children or have been those children, who want the future to be different and so invest themselves into being and making that difference. Compassion is the builder's plumb line for the church. It tells us whether the structures we're creating and investing ourselves in, whether those structures will be strong and endure. Forget finance, personnel, planning, and all those important things. Compassion is the outcome we are seeking, and also the energy in getting there. So we need to look past the outward appearances and look to the heart. And compassion is a heart word. Anthony de Mello tells the story. One evening there was a family who went out to dinner at a local restaurant. Everyone got a menu, even the youngest, Amy, who was 6 years old. Since the conversation was an adult one, Amy sat there, ignored. When the waitress took their orders, she came to Amy last. "And what would you like to eat, young lady?" she asked. Amy answered, "I'll have a hamburger, chips, and a large Diet Coke." "No," said her mother. "She'll have a small salad with low-fat dressing, baked chicken, carrots, and boiled rice. And milk to drink," chimed in her father. The waitress looked at Amy and asked, "Would you like tomato sauce or mustard on your hamburger?" And Amy replied, "Tomato sauce, please. And oh, put lots of lettuce in the hamburger too, to please my parents. Thank you very much." As the waitress walked away to place the order, Amy turned toward her family and said, "You know what? She thinks I'm real." This is not a story about nutrition and the rights and wrongs thereof. This is a story about us adults seeing past ourselves and relating to children as real, as in Amy's word, real, regardless of food or drink tastes. But actually, it's a story primarily about a waitress. Waitresses are invariably low paid. Risking her employment, the parents could have easily complained to the management. To make a statement, this waitress makes a statement about the importance of everyone, even a child. For in the world of power and privilege, which is the world we all live in, to see past outward appearances and relate to everyone who has a heart with real heart takes both courage and insight. I'm reminded of an incident where one of my children, then a teenager, and a waiter at the Northern Club, it's quite an exclusive club downtown, likewise risked their employment by refusing to serve alcohol to a pregnant woman. And you can imagine the clientele at the club not appreciating such perceived impertinence. For him, my son, the child soon to be born, was also real and worthy of being respected. And to their credit, the Northern Club management backed him. This morning in church, I want us to do something different. On the back of the service sheet, I've written two questions. What gets me riled up and what gives me great joy? And both are different ways of talking about what we're passionate about. So I invite you to write your answers and then share them with the person beside you. Kia ora tātou. We'll see you next week. Bye.